Let go of that child right now. The woman's voice sliced through the playground like a knife. Heads turned. The air grew tense. A young black mother stood frozen, her hands resting gently on the shoulders of a laughing little girl with bright blonde curls. The woman, standing a few feet away, had her phone out, recording and dialing at the same time. Her face was tight with outrage, and her lips barely moved as she spoke into the phone. 911. Yes, I need the police. There's a suspicious woman here and she's trying to abduct a child. Gasps rippled through the park. Parents pulled their kids closer. The black mom looked around in disbelief. Abduct? She's my daughter, she said, her voice rising. But it was clear no one was ready to believe her, not yet. The sirens wailed in the distance, and the tension grew unbearable. The woman's name was Karen, and she was sure she was doing the right thing. But as the police cars screeched to a halt and officers poured out, she had no idea that her world was about to turn upside down. It was an unusually warm afternoon at Greenview Park. Kids swarmed the playground, their laughter blending with the rustle of leaves and the occasional bark of a dog. Among the crowd was Lisa, a young mother who often brought her daughter, Lily, to the park after school. Lisa's dark skin glowed in the sunlight, her braids pulled back into a neat ponytail. Lily, her 5-year-old daughter, had inherited her late father's blonde hair and pale complexion. To strangers, they didn't look like mother and daughter. Lisa was used to the double takes, the lingering stares, and the occasional nosy question. But today, she wasn't thinking about any of that. She was focused on Lily, who had just mastered the monkey bars and was now begging for ice cream. One more swing, and then we'll get ice cream, Lisa said with a smile. Karen had been watching them from a distance, her sharp eyes scanning the scene. She'd come to the park with her grandson, a boisterous 3-year-old named Jake. But Jake was busy building a sandcastle, and Karen's attention had shifted to Lisa and Lily. Something doesn't add up, Karen muttered to herself. She'd seen the way Lisa held Lily's hand, the way she fussed over her. But to Karen, it didn't look right. Why would a black woman be so close to a white child? It was suspicious, she decided. When Lily fell and scraped her knee, Lisa rushed over, pulling a bandage from her bag. "You're okay, baby. Let me fix it," she said, gently patting Lily's curly head. Karen's suspicion boiled over. That's when she grabbed her phone. As Lisa comforted Lily, she noticed Karen walking toward them, her phone already up. The look in Karen's eyes sent a chill down Lisa's spine. "Is this your child?" Karen demanded, her voice loud enough to draw attention. Lisa stood up, keeping a protective arm around Lily. "Yes, she's my daughter," Lisa replied, her tone calm but firm. Karen scoffed, not buying it for a second. "I've never seen you here before," she said, "and I come here all the time. That little girl doesn't look like you. You need to explain yourself." Lisa blinked, momentarily stunned. "Excuse me, I don't need to explain anything to you." Karen's face turned red with indignation. "I know what's going on here," she hissed. "You think you can just walk into a park and take someone else's child?" Lisa felt her hands tremble, but she stood her ground. "She's my child," she repeated, her voice stronger this time. "You don't know what you're talking about." By now, a small crowd had gathered, their murmurs adding to the growing tension. "Is everything okay here?" One man asked, stepping forward. Karen pointed a dramatic finger at Lisa. "She's trying to kidnap that little girl." Lisa's jaw dropped. "What? That's insane," she cried. The crowd's energy shifted, and Lisa could feel their doubts. "I have pictures of us together. I can show you," she said, reaching for her phone. But Karen wasn't interested in evidence. She was already dialing. 911. "There's a black woman here trying to abduct a white child," she said, her voice dripping with urgency. Lisa's heart pounded as she saw people pulling out their phones, recording the scene. Lily clung to her leg, her eyes wide with confusion. "Mommy, what's happening?" she whispered. "It's okay, baby," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. But inside, she was terrified. Within minutes, the sound of sirens grew louder. Lisa's mind raced. Would the police believe her? What if they didn't? She thought about all the stories she'd seen on the news, and a sick feeling settled in her stomach. The police cars skidded to a stop, and 3 officers jumped out, their hands hovering near their holsters. "What's going on here?" one of them barked. Karen rushed forward, pointing at Lisa. "That woman is trying to kidnap that little girl," she said, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. Lisa opened her mouth to speak, but the officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, step away from the child," he said. Lisa felt her world tilt. "She's my daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "I have proof." One of the officers stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "We're going to need you to come with us, ma'am," he said. Lisa's heart sank as she saw the fear in Lily's eyes. "No," Lily cried, wrapping her arms around her mom's leg. The officer hesitated, looking between Lisa and the crying child. "We'll sort this out," he said, though his tone wasn't reassuring. Karen folded her arms, a satisfied smirk on her face. But just as Lisa was about to comply, a voice called out from the crowd. "Wait, I know her." The crowd parted, revealing an elderly man with a kind face. He walked toward the officers, holding up his phone. "I have pictures of them together," he said. "She's telling the truth. That's her daughter." Karen's smirk faltered. The officers exchanged looks, and one of them stepped forward to check the man's phone. Lisa's pulse raced as she watched the officer's face. She could only hope the truth would finally come out. And then the officer's eyes narrowed, and he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I think you need to explain yourself." Lisa let out a shaky breath, but she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Karen's face twisted in confusion. "Explain myself? I'm not the one kidnapping a child," she snapped. Her voice, once still commanding, now wavered. The officer held up a hand to silence her. "We've had evidence that this woman is telling the truth," he said. "We're going to need more information from you." Karen's confidence crumbled. "I was only trying to protect the child," she protested. "Isn't that what a good citizen should do?" Meanwhile, Lisa knelt beside Lily, who was still clinging to her. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "We're going to be fine." Another officer approached Lisa. "Ma'am, do you have identification? Anything that proves your relationship with the child?" Lisa nodded quickly, pulling out her wallet with shaky hands. "I have her birth certificate on my phone too," she said. "And pictures, lots of them." The officer reviewed Lisa's ID and scrolled through her phone, where Lisa had pulled up a family photo album. The pictures showed moments of joy. Lily at her birthday party, Lisa braiding her hair, the two of them smiling at a beach. The officer's expression softened. "This all checks out," he said. He looked over at Karen. "Ma'am, it seems you've made a serious mistake." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Mistake," she repeated. "You don't understand. I saw her with the child, and it didn't look right. I was just trying to help." The officer's tone hardened. "By accusing an innocent woman of kidnapping, do you have any idea how serious that is?" The crowd murmured, their sympathy shifting visibly toward Lisa. A few parents who had been watching the scene unfold now looked at Karen with disdain. Lisa stood up, still holding Lily's hand. "You didn't try to help," she said, her voice steady now. "You assumed. You judged me because of the color of my skin." Karen bristled. "That's not true. I didn't see race." Lisa cut her off. "You didn't see a mother and her child. You saw a problem that wasn't there." The elderly man who had stepped forward earlier cleared his throat. "I've seen them here plenty of times," he said. "You should have asked questions before jumping to conclusions." Karen looked around, realizing the crowd was no longer on her side. I was just trying to do the right thing," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. The lead officer sighed. "Karen Wright," he said, glancing at her ID. "Here's the deal. Making a false report is a serious offense. We could charge you, but that's up to the victim." Lisa stared at Karen, her mind racing. She felt the weight of the moment, not just for herself, but for Lily, who had been terrified, and for every other person who might face a similar situation. Before Lisa could respond, Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, can we just go home?" she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. Lisa knelt down again, wiping Lily's face gently. "Yes, baby, we'll go home soon," she said. She straightened up and looked at the officer. "I don't want to press charges," she said, "but I do want her to understand what she's done." The officer nodded, then turned to Karen. "You're lucky," he said, "but you need to think hard about your actions. False accusations like this can ruin lives." Karen didn't respond. Her face was pale, and she looked as though she might cry. The officers began to disperse, signaling the end of the ordeal. The crowd thinned, though a few people stayed behind, offering Lisa words of support. "Are you okay?" one woman asked, placing a hand on Lisa's shoulder. Lisa nodded, though her eyes were tired. "I will be, thank you." Karen lingered at the edge of the park, her grandson tugging at her hand. "Grandma, can we go now?" Jake asked, his voice full of confusion. Karen glanced at Lisa one last time. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but thought better of it. Instead, she turned and walked away, her steps heavy with shame. Lisa watched her go, then took Lily's hand. "Let's get that ice cream," she said, her voice lighter now. Lily smiled for the first time since the ordeal began. Can I get 2 scoops? Lisa laughed softly. You can have 3. As they walked toward the ice cream truck, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. She had a story to tell, and she wasn't going to let it go untold. But just as they reached the truck, her phone buzzed with a notification. Lisa frowned as she checked the screen. The headline read, "Local mom accused of kidnapping in shocking park incident." Her heart sank. Someone had posted the video online, and it was already going viral. Lisa stared at the notification, her heart pounding. She hadn't even had time to process what had just happened, and now the whole world would know. She quickly opened the link. The video, shaky and grainy, captured Karen's confrontation in all its ugly glory. The title was inflammatory. Karen calls cops on black mom for kidnapping her own child. The comments were pouring in by the second. Here we go again. When will people learn? This poor mom. I hope she sues Karen's pants off. Why do they always assume the worst? Disgusting. And then there were the ones Lisa dreaded. Maybe Karen was right. Something doesn't add up. Why didn't the mom just cooperate if she had nothing to hide? Lisa locked her phone, trying to block out the noise. Mommy, what's wrong? Lally asked, her eyes wide with concern. Lisa forced a smile. Nothing, sweetie. Let's get your ice cream. But as they approached the truck, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that this video would change everything. By the time Lisa and Lily got home, the incident had already made the local news. Lisa sat on the couch, her hands gripping her phone as she scrolled through article after article. Each one recounted the same story, some with added details from witnesses at the park. The video had been shared on every major social media platform, and it wasn't slowing down. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from her best friend, Danielle. Danielle, girl, I just saw the video. Are you okay? Do you want me to come over? Lisa hesitated for a moment before replying. Lisa, we're okay, just shaken up. I'll call you later. She sighed and leaned back, her mind racing. How was she supposed to move on from this? She knew the internet would chew on the story for a few days, maybe a week, and then move on. But what about her? Her face was now plastered all over social media, along with Lily's. A knock at the door jolted her out of her thoughts. Lisa peeked through the peephole and saw her neighbor, Mrs. Ruse, standing outside with a concerned look. Lisa opened the door. Hi, Mrs. Ruse. Mrs. Ruse gave her a sympathetic smile. I saw the news. I just wanted to check on you and Lily. Are you okay? Lisa nodded. We're fine. It's just been a rough day. Mrs. Ruse reached out and squeezed Lisa's hand. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. And if anyone gives you trouble, you let me know. Thank you, Lisa said, her voice soft. After Mrs. Ruse left, Lisa sat back down and pulled Lily close. How about we watch a movie? She suggested. Lily's eyes lit up. Can we watch Moana? Of course, Lisa said, grateful for the distraction. As the movie played, Lisa tried to focus on the bright colors and catchy songs, but her mind kept drifting back to the park. She knew she couldn't stay silent. This was bigger than just her and Lily. The next morning, Lisa woke up to more messages. Some were from friends and family offering support, but others were from strangers. Some messages were kind. You're so brave for standing up to that woman. Stay strong, we're all rooting for you. But others were hateful. You're just playing the victim. Why didn't you cooperate if you had nothing to hide? Lisa felt a lump in her throat as she read through the comments. She knew she couldn't control what people thought, but it still hurt. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from an unknown number. Lisa hesitated before answering. Hello. Hi, is this Lisa Carter? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's this? This is Claire Thompson from Channel 7 News. We saw the video of the incident at the park, and we'd like to interview you about what happened. Lisa's stomach clenched. I'm not sure if I'm ready to talk about it publicly, she said. I understand, Claire said. But this story is already out there, and your voice deserves to be heard. We want to give you a platform to share your side. Lisa hesitated. She knew Claire was right. If she stayed silent, the narrative would be shaped without her. But going public meant opening herself up to more scrutiny. I'll think about it, Lisa said finally. Take your time, Claire replied. If you decide to speak, you know where to find me. After hanging up, Lisa sat in silence. She knew she had a decision to make, but she wasn't sure what the right choice was. Later that day, Lisa took Lily to school. As they walked through the gates, Lisa noticed the whispers and sideways glances from other parents. She held her head high, refusing to let their judgment get to her. When she got back home, Lisa decided to check social media again. To her surprise, she found a message in her inbox from an organization called Mothers United for Equality. The message read, "Dear Lisa, we saw what happened to you at the park, and we want to help. Our organization supports mothers who face discrimination and unjust accusations. If you're interested, we'd love to speak with you and offer our assistance." Lisa stared at the message, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe she didn't have to face this alone. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed with another notification. This time, it was a news alert. "Karen from Viral Park Incident speaks out. I was just trying to protect the child." Lisa's eyes widened as she clicked on the link. Karen had given an interview, and her words were already stirring up a new wave of controversy. "She didn't look like the child's mother," Karen said in the video, her voice shaky. "I acted on my instincts. If I had to do it again, I would." Lisa clenched her jaw, her hands trembling with anger. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lisa's hands gripped her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Karen's interview played out on the small screen, each word fueling the fire in her chest. "If I had to do it again, I would." The audacity. The complete lack of remorse. Karen wasn't just doubling down. She was painting herself as a hero. Lisa turned off the video, unable to watch anymore. She paced the room, her thoughts swirling. Karen's words weren't just a defense. They were a justification for racial profiling, wrapped in the guise of concern. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Danielle. "Danielle, Lisa, did you see what that woman said? She's playing the victim now. You can't let her get away with this." Lisa sighed and sat down, her mind made up. She opened her email and replied to the journalist from Channel 7. "Lisa, hi Claire, I'm ready to share my story. Let me know when you're available." Within minutes, Claire responded, eager to set up the interview. They agreed to meet the next day at the station. The next morning, Lisa dropped Lily off at school and headed straight to the news studio. As she walked in, her nerves buzzed like a live wire. Claire met her in the lobby, offering a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming, Lisa," Claire said. "I know this isn't easy, but your voice is important." Lisa nodded, taking a deep breath. "I just want people to understand what really happened." They settled into the studio, the bright lights and cameras making Lisa's heart race. Claire began with some warm-up questions about Lisa's life, her work, and her role as a mother. Then they delved into the incident. "Lisa, can you walk us through what happened that day at the park?" Claire asked. Lisa recounted the story, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She described the moment Karen approached her, the accusations, the fear in Lily's eyes, and the arrival of the police. "What was going through your mind when the police showed up?" Claire asked. "I was terrified," Lisa admitted. "Not just for myself, but for my daughter. I've seen how situations like this can escalate, and I was scared of what might happen if they didn't believe me." Claire nodded, her expression sympathetic. "And how did it feel when Karen's accusations were proven false?" Lisa paused, choosing her words carefully. "It was a relief, but it was also frustrating. Karen didn't see me as a mother. She saw me as a threat, and that's something no parent should ever have to experience." The interview wrapped up with a powerful closing statement from Lisa. "I hope my story helps people see the harm that comes from jumping to conclusions based on race. We're all part of this community, and we need to do better." When the interview aired later that evening, it quickly gained traction. Social media lit up with support for Lisa, with hashtags like #JusticeForLisa and #StopRacialProfiling trending nationwide. Messages of encouragement flooded Lisa's inbox. People shared their own experiences of being judged or mistreated because of their race, and many thanked Lisa for speaking out. But not everyone was supportive. As expected, trolls came out in full force, accusing Lisa of playing the race card or seeking attention. Lisa tried to focus on the positive, but the negativity was hard to ignore. She spent the next few days juggling work, taking care of Lily, and responding to messages from well-wishers and reporters. One evening, Lisa received a call from Mothers United for Equality, the organization that had reached out earlier. A woman named Karen Williams, ironic, Lisa thought, introduced herself as the director. "Lisa, your story has resonated with so many people," Karen Williams said. "We'd like to invite you to speak at our upcoming rally against racial profiling." Lisa hesitated. Public speaking wasn't her strong suit, but she knew this was an opportunity to make a difference. "I'd be honored," she said finally. The rally was scheduled for the following Saturday at City Hall. As the day approached, Lisa felt a mix of nerves and determination. She spent her evenings drafting and rehearsing her speech, with Danielle offering feedback and encouragement. The morning of the rally, Lisa stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her outfit and practicing deep breaths. "You got this," she told herself. At City Hall, a large crowd had gathered, holding signs with messages like "End Racial Profiling" and "Mothers Against Discrimination." The atmosphere was charged with energy and hope. Karen Williams introduced Lisa, and the crowd erupted in applause as she stepped up to the podium. Lisa gripped the microphone, her hands trembling slightly. She looked out at the sea of faces, mothers, fathers, children, and allies, all there to stand against injustice. "Thank you for being here today," Lisa began, her voice strong. "A week ago, I was just a mom taking my daughter to the park. But that day, I was treated like a criminal because of the color of my skin." She spoke about the fear, the humiliation, and the impact on Lily. She shared her hopes for a future where no one would have to experience what she did. "I'm not here to spread hate," Lisa said. "I'm here to call for understanding, for empathy, and for change. We can't let fear and prejudice dictate our actions. We owe it to our children to do better." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Lisa felt a wave of emotion, knowing she had turned her pain into something powerful. But as the rally continued, Lisa's phone buzzed with a new notification. Another video was going viral. This time, it was Karen. She had returned to the park, and this time, she wasn't alone. Lisa's heart sank as she watched the clip. Karen was standing in the same spot as before, holding a sign that read, "Protect our kids." She was surrounded by a small group of supporters, their faces filled with defiance. One of them stepped forward, shouting into a megaphone, "We're not backing down. This is about safety, not race." Lisa knew then that the battle was far from over. Lisa's stomach twisted as she stared at the video. Karen and her supporters had turned the park into a platform for their misguided crusade. The crowd chanted slogans like "Kids First, Not Politics," and "No More False Accusations." The irony wasn't lost on Lisa. They were the ones making false claims. Danielle burst through the door, holding her phone. "Lisa, did you see this?" Lisa nodded, her jaw clenched. She's not even pretending to apologize. Now she's trying to paint herself as the victim. Danielle flopped onto the couch. What's her endgame? She called the cops on a black mom, minding her business, and now she wants sympathy. Lisa sighed, rubbing her temples. She doesn't want sympathy. She wants control of the narrative, and the scary part is some people are buying it. Danielle scrolled through the comments under the video. Look at this garbage," she said, reading aloud. "Karen's just looking out for the kids. Why is everyone so quick to call her a racist?" Lisa's phone buzzed with another message, this time from Claire at Channel 7. "Claire, Lisa, we're covering the counter-protest at Greenview Park. Would you like to comment on camera?" Lisa stared at the message for a long moment. She wasn't sure if she had the energy to confront Karen again, but she also knew she couldn't stay silent. She typed a quick response. "I'll be there." The next day, Lisa arrived at Greenview Park, her heart pounding. The once quiet park was now a battleground of opposing groups. On one side stood Karen and her supporters, holding signs and chanting about child safety. On the other side were members of the community rallying behind Lisa, their signs reading, "Stop profiling, start parenting," and "Moms deserve respect." Claire met Lisa near the playground, microphone in hand. "Lisa, thank you for coming," she said. "Are you ready to speak?" Lisa nodded, steeling herself. As the camera rolled, Claire asked, "What do you make of the counter-protest today?" Lisa glanced at Karen's group, then back at Claire. "It's disappointing," she said. "This isn't about safety. It's about fear and prejudice." Karen's actions weren't driven by concern for a child. They were driven by the assumption that a black woman couldn't possibly be the mother of a white child. Claire nodded. "What message do you want to send to those watching?" "I want people to think before they act," Lisa said firmly. "To ask questions, to seek understanding, instead of jumping to conclusions based on skin color. We all want our kids to be safe, but that starts with building a community, not tearing it apart." As the interview wrapped up, Lisa noticed Karen approaching, her face set in a determined scowl. The cameras followed her. "Lisa," Karen called out, her voice sharp. "I think we need to talk." Lisa hesitated, but then nodded. "Fine, let's talk." The crowd quieted, their eyes locked on the two women. Karen crossed her arms. "I don't know why you're making this into a race issue," she said. "I would have called the cops no matter who you were." Lisa took a deep breath. "You might believe that, Karen, but your actions say otherwise. You didn't ask any questions. You didn't try to understand. You just assumed I was a threat because I don't look like my daughter." Karen's cheeks flushed. I was trying to protect her, she insisted. Lisa shook her head. You didn't protect anyone. You traumatized my daughter. You put us both in danger, and now, instead of owning up to your mistake, you're doubling down. The tension was thick as the two women stood face to face. Karen's supporters murmured among themselves, while Lisa's side cheered her on. Then, from the crowd, a new voice spoke up. Karen, have you ever considered that you might be wrong? It was a middle-aged man, one of Karen's own supporters. He stepped forward, holding his sign loosely at his side. I came here today because I believed in you, he said. But seeing this, I'm not so sure anymore. Karen's eyes widened. Jim, what are you saying? Jim sighed. I'm saying maybe it's time to listen instead of defend. If we're wrong, we need to make it right. Karen looked around, realizing that even some of her own supporters were starting to question her. Her face hardened. I've done nothing wrong, she said stiffly. I was protecting a child, and I'd do it again. Lisa sighed. That's the problem, Karen. You're so focused on being right, you can't see the harm you've caused. The crowd buzzed with mixed reactions. Some applauded Lisa's courage, while others shouted their support for Karen. Before Karen could respond, Claire stepped forward, her microphone still recording. Lisa, what do you hope will come from all of this? Lisa turned to face the camera. I hope this becomes a learning moment, she said. For all of us. It's not enough to say we're not racist. We have to actively work against prejudice in our everyday lives. We have to do better, for our kids and for each other. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Karen stood in stunned silence, her grip tightening on her sign. As Lisa walked away, hand in hand with Danielle, she felt a sense of resolve. This wasn't just about her and Karen anymore. It was about changing the conversation, and she was ready for the fight. But just as Lisa reached her car, her phone buzzed with another notification. This time, it was a private message from an anonymous account. The message read, You think you're safe? Think again. Lisa's breath caught as she stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the screen, a chill running down her spine. Who would send something like that? Was it just another internet troll, or was it something more sinister? Danielle noticed her hesitation. What's wrong? Lisa showed her the message. Danielle's eyes narrowed. Wow, so now they're sending threats? You need to report this. Lisa nodded, her mind racing. I'll do it as soon as we get home. The drive back was quiet, the weight of the day pressing heavily on both women. When they arrived, Lisa immediately called the police to report the threat. The officer on the line was calm and professional, but his tone offered little reassurance. We'll open an investigation, he said. Make sure you keep your doors locked and be aware of your surroundings. If anything else happens, call us immediately. After hanging up, Lisa locked every window and door in the house. Danielle stayed over, insisting she wouldn't leave Lisa and Lily alone. That night, Lisa sat on her couch, scrolling through social media. The rally had gained even more attention, with clips of her speech being shared widely. Most of the comments were supportive, but every now and then, she'd see something that made her stomach turn. She's just looking for fame. Karen was right all along. Protect the kids. Someone needs to teach that woman a lesson. Lisa closed the app, her heart heavy. She looked over at Lily, who was fast asleep on the couch next to Danielle. Despite everything, Lily had remained cheerful, asking if they could visit the park again soon. Lisa leaned back, trying to relax, but sleep wouldn't come. The next morning, Lisa woke up to another flood of messages. This time, one stood out, an invitation from a prominent talk show. They wanted her to appear and share her story with a national audience. Danielle, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, nearly spat it out when Lisa read the email aloud. You have to do it, she said. This is your chance to reach even more people. Lisa hesitated. I don't know. The bigger the platform, the bigger the backlash. Danielle shook her head. But think about the impact you could have. You've already started a conversation. This could take it to the next level. Lisa considered it. She knew Danielle was right. After a moment, she sent a reply, accepting the invitation. The talk show taping was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Lisa tried to keep life as normal as possible for Lily. They stuck to their usual routine, school drop-offs, homework, bedtime stories. But the tension was always there, just beneath the surface. One afternoon, as Lisa picked Lily up from school, she noticed a familiar figure standing across the street. Karen. Lisa's heart raced. What was she doing here? Karen wasn't holding any signs this time, but her presence was enough to send a wave of anxiety through Lisa. Karen met Lisa's gaze, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. Lisa quickly ushered Lily into the car, her hands trembling as she gripped the steering wheel. When they got home, Lisa called Danielle. She was at Lally's school, Lisa said, her voice shaking. Danielle was furious. That's crossing the line. You need to tell the school and the police. Lisa agreed, reporting the incident to both. The school promised to keep a closer eye on their grounds, and the police added the encounter to their ongoing investigation. The day of the talk show arrived quickly. Lisa felt a mix of nerves and determination as she sat in the green room, waiting to be called on stage. The show's host, a well-known journalist named Ava Sinclair, greeted her warmly before the taping began. Lisa, your story has touched so many people, Ava said. We're honored to have you here today. When the cameras started rolling, Ava began with a recap of the park incident, showing clips of both Lisa's rally and Karen's counter-protest. Then she turned to Lisa. Lisa, thank you for joining us, Ava said. What has this experience been like for you and your daughter? Lisa took a deep breath. It's been overwhelming, she admitted. But I've also seen how many people are standing with us, and that gives me hope. Ava nodded. Karen has been vocal about her perspective, claiming she acted out of concern for the child's safety. How do you respond to that? Lisa's jaw tightened. Karen may believe she was doing the right thing, but her actions were rooted in prejudice. She saw a black woman with a white child and assumed the worst. That kind of thinking is dangerous and has real consequences. The audience murmured in agreement. Ava leaned forward. What do you hope to achieve by sharing your story? I want people to understand the impact of their actions, Lisa said, and I want to create a safer, more inclusive community for everyone. The interview ended with a standing ovation from the audience. As Lisa left the stage, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. But her relief was short-lived. That evening, as Lisa and Lily returned home, they found a note taped to their front door. In bold, capital letters it read, "WUVEBEN warned." Lisa's heart pounded as she scanned the empty street. Whoever had left the note was long gone, but the message was clear. Someone was watching. Lisa's hands shook as she pulled the note from the door. The weight of the message was suffocating. Danielle, who had come along to help Lisa unpack from the day's events, froze when she saw Lisa's pale face. What is it? Danielle asked, her voice tense. Lisa handed her the note. Danielle's eyes widened as she read it. That's it. We're calling the police again. Lisa nodded, her thoughts racing. She ushered Lily inside, doing her best to keep calm for her daughter's sake. Lily, go wash up for dinner, okay? Lily looked up, sensing the unease in her mom's voice. Are you okay, Mommy? Lisa forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetie. Go on now. Once Lily was out of earshot, Lisa dialed the police. Within 20 minutes, 2 officers arrived, the same ones who had taken her earlier reports. They inspected the note, their expressions grim. This is escalating, one officer said. Do you have any idea who might have left this? Lisa shook her head. No, but I have my suspicions. She explained the encounter at the park and Karen's appearance at Lally's school. The officer nodded. We'll increase patrols in the area and see if we can get any fingerprints off the note. In the meantime, stay vigilant. If you see anything suspicious, call us immediately. After the officers left, Lisa sat on the couch, her head in her hands. Danielle sat beside her, offering silent support. This is getting out of hand, Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. First, the online threats, then Karen showing up, and now this? What if it gets worse? Danielle put a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this, Lisa. We'll get through it together. The next day, Lisa decided to meet with Karen Williams from Mothers United for Equality. They agreed to meet at a cafe downtown, away from prying eyes. As Lisa walked in, she spotted Karen Williams at a corner table, her warm smile a stark contrast to the tension Lisa had been living under. Lisa, it's so good to see you, Karen said, standing to greet her. Thank you for meeting me, Lisa replied, taking a seat. Karen leaned in, her expression serious. I've been following your story closely, and I want you to know we're here to support you. But I'm worried about these threats. Have you considered taking legal action? Lisa sighed. I've thought about it, but I'm not sure where to start. I just want to protect my daughter and move on with our lives. Karen nodded. I understand. But these threats aren't something to take lightly. Our organization has connections with lawyers who specialize in cases like yours. They can help you navigate this and ensure your safety. Lisa considered this. I appreciate that. I'll think about it. Karen smiled. In the meantime, we're organizing another rally next weekend. We'd love for you to speak again, if you're up for it. Lisa hesitated. I'll let you know. Right now, I just need to focus on keeping Lily safe. That evening, as Lisa prepared dinner, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every noise outside made her jump. She double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, her paranoia growing by the minute. After putting Lily to bed, Lisa sat in the living room with Danielle. They were discussing next steps when a sudden knock at the door made them both freeze. Danielle stood up, motioning for Lisa to stay back. She peered through the peephole, then relaxed. It's just Mrs. Ruiz. Lisa exhaled and opened the door. Her elderly neighbor stood there, holding a plate of cookies. I heard about everything going on, Mrs. Ruiz said, her voice filled with concern. I just wanted to check on you and bring you something sweet. Lisa smiled, touched by the gesture. Thank you, Mrs. Ruiz. That means a lot. Mrs. Ruiz patted Lisa's hand. You're a strong woman, Lisa. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. After she left, Lisa felt a small glimmer of hope. She wasn't alone in this fight. But that night, Lisa was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. Her heart raced as she jumped out of bed and ran to Lily's room, finding her daughter still fast asleep. Danielle. Lisa called out, her voice shaking. Danielle was already in the hallway, her eyes wide. What was that? Lisa pointed toward the living room. Together they crept forward, their steps cautious. When they reached the living room, they saw it. The front window was broken, shards of glass littering the floor. And lying in the middle of the room was a brick wrapped in paper. Lisa picked up the brick carefully, unwrapping the note. Next time, it won't just be a warning. Lisa's knees nearly buckled. Danielle grabbed her, helping her to the couch. We're calling the cops right now, Danielle said firmly, pulling out her phone. Lisa could barely speak. The threats were no longer just words. Whoever was behind this was escalating and fast. Within minutes, the police arrived again, their expressions even more serious this time. They took photos of the scene, collected the brick and note, and assured Lisa they would do everything in their power to find the person responsible. But as Lisa watched them work, a chilling realization settled in her mind. This wasn't just about her anymore. Whoever was behind these attacks was willing to go to dangerous lengths to silence her. And she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep her family safe. The police left after midnight, promising to increase their patrols around Lisa's neighborhood. They urged her to consider relocating temporarily, but Lisa was hesitant. Where could she go that would feel safer than her own home? Danielle stayed by her side, refusing to leave. You can't keep living like this, Lisa. We need to figure out who's behind these threats. Lisa nodded, but her mind was clouded with fear and exhaustion. What if they hurt Lily? I can't let that happen. Danielle's face hardened. They won't, but we need help. The next morning, Lisa made 2 important calls. First, she contacted the lawyer recommended by Karen Williams. The lawyer, a sharp and confident woman named Andrea, agreed to take on Lisa's case. Lisa will start by filing for a restraining order against Karen and any known associates, Andrea explained. We'll also push for the police to take more aggressive action in their investigation. The second call was to a private security firm. Within hours, a security consultant named Marcus arrived at Lisa's house. He assessed the property, pointing out vulnerabilities and suggesting immediate upgrades, reinforced locks, motion-activated cameras, and a panic button system. By the end of the day, the house felt like a fortress. But despite the added security, Lisa's anxiety lingered. 2 days later, Lisa received a call from Andrea. Lisa, we made some progress, Andrea said. The police traced the fingerprint on the note left with the brick. It belongs to someone named Todd Baxter. Does that name ring a bell? Lisa frowned. No, I don't know anyone by that name. Andrea continued. It turns out Todd is one of the people who attended Karen's counter-protest at the park. The police are bringing him in for questioning. Relief washed over Lisa, but it was short-lived. Do you think he's the only one involved? It's hard to say, Andrea admitted. But this is a good start. If Todd talks, we might get more names. That evening, Lisa sat down with Danielle to discuss the latest developments. So, they caught one of them, Danielle said, a mix of relief and skepticism in her voice. That's great, but what if there are more? What if Karen herself is involved? Lisa sighed. I wouldn't be surprised. She's been the instigator from the start. They decided to stay vigilant, knowing that the fight wasn't over yet. The next morning, Lisa's phone buzzed with another call from Andrea. Todd confessed, Andrea said. He admitted to throwing the brick, but he claims it wasn't his idea. According to him, Karen and another man named Greg pushed him to do it. Lisa's stomach turned. Karen was behind this all along, she said, her voice filled with a mix of anger and vindication. Andrea's tone was serious. The police are moving forward with charges against Todd, and they're bringing Karen and Greg in for questioning. This could lead to more serious charges if they find enough evidence. For the first time in days, Lisa felt a small glimmer of hope. Thank you, Andrea. I really appreciate everything you're doing. We're just getting started, Andrea said. Stay strong, Lisa. Later that afternoon, the news broke. Karen Smith and 2 associates under investigation for harassment and vandalism. The headlines spread like wildfire, and Lisa's phone lit up with messages of support. Karen's smug image had been replaced with one of her being escorted out of her home by police. Social media exploded with reactions. Justice is finally being served. Looks like Karen's concern wasn't so pure after all. This is what accountability looks like. Lisa couldn't help but feel a sense of validation, but she knew this was just one step toward justice. 2 days later, Andrea called again. This time, her voice carried a note of urgency. Lisa, we've hit a snag, she said. Karen and her lawyer are claiming that she had no direct involvement in the harassment. They're trying to shift all the blame onto Todd and Greg. Lisa's heart sank. What does that mean for the case? It complicates things, Andrea admitted. We'll need more evidence to prove Karen's involvement. The police are working on getting access to her phone records and communications with Todd and Greg, but it might take time. Lisa felt a wave of frustration. She can't just walk away from this. Andrea's voice was firm. She won't, Lisa. We'll make sure of it. That evening, Lisa sat in her living room, reflecting on everything that had happened. The threats, the vandalism, the rallies. Each event had pushed her closer to the edge, but she refused to be broken. As she tucked Lily into bed, Lisa whispered, "We're going to be okay, baby. I promise." But deep down, she knew the fight was far from over. Just as Lisa settled onto the couch, her phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was a video. She hesitated, then pressed play. The footage showed her home, recorded from outside, through one of the new security cameras. In the grainy night vision, a figure stood just beyond the fence, their face obscured. Then came the message, "This isn't over." Lisa's blood ran cold. Lisa's heart pounded as she replayed the video. The figure lingered in the shadows, motionless, before vanishing into the night. The timestamp showed it had been recorded just hours ago. Danielle, sitting beside her, leaned in to watch. "This is insane," she muttered, her voice low but tense. "They're not backing down." Lisa nodded, her mind racing. She immediately forwarded the video to Andrea and called the police. The officer who arrived was one she recognized from the previous visits. His face was grim as he reviewed the footage. "This is escalating," he said. "We'll come through the footage to see if we can identify the individual. In the meantime, we'll increase patrols around your house." Lisa swallowed hard, the fear settling deeper. "How much more can we take?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer's expression softened. "We'll do everything we can to keep you safe, Miss Carter." The next day, Andrea called with an update. "Lisa, the police have identified the person in the video," she said. "It's Greg, one of Karen's associates. He's already under investigation, so this new footage strengthens the case against him." Lisa felt a small wave of relief but couldn't shake her unease. What about Karen? Is she still denying everything? "She is," Andrea confirmed. "But this footage might pressure Greg to cooperate. If we can get him to admit Karen's role, it'll be a game changer." Lisa nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "Let's make sure that happens." That evening, Lisa sat down with Lily for dinner. She tried to keep things light, asking about her day at school and planning their weekend. But Lily was unusually quiet, picking at her food. "Mommy, are the bad people gone yet?" Lily asked softly, her eyes full of worry. Lisa's heart broke. She reached across the table and took Lily's hand. "We're working on it, baby. The police are making sure we're safe. You don't have to be scared." Lily nodded but didn't seem convinced. Lisa knew that no amount of reassurance could erase the fear her daughter had endured. The next few days passed with a tense quiet. The increased police presence around the neighborhood offered some comfort, but Lisa remained on edge. Every creak, every shadow outside her window set her nerves on high alert. Then one afternoon, Andrea called with surprising news. "Lisa, Greg has agreed to a plea deal," Andrea said. "He's willing to testify that Karen orchestrated the harassment." Lisa sat up straight, her heart racing. What does this mean for the case? It's a major breakthrough, Andrea explained. With Greg's testimony and the evidence we gathered, we can push for charges against Karen. She won't be able to hide behind her lies anymore. Lisa felt a surge of hope. Finally, there was a light at the end of this dark tunnel. 2 days later, the police arrested Karen on charges of harassment, conspiracy, and vandalism. The news spread quickly, with headlines like "Karen Smith arrested in harassment case," "Community seeks justice," dominating social media. Lisa watched the coverage from her living room, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over her. For months, Karen had been a symbol of fear and injustice in her life. Now she was facing the consequences of her actions. But just as Lisa began to feel a sense of closure, her phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was from an unknown number. "You think this is over? We're just getting started." Lisa's breath itched. She immediately showed Danielle, who was equally alarmed. "What now?" Danielle asked, her voice shaky. "Karen's behind bars. Who else could be doing this?" Lisa's mind raced. Was there someone else in Karen's circle still out there, continuing the harassment? That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her thoughts spinning. The message felt like a cruel reminder that her battle wasn't over. She got up and paced the living room, glancing out the window every few minutes. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Check your front porch." Lisa froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She woke Danielle, and together they approached the front door cautiously. Danielle peered through the peephole, her eyes widening. "There's something out there," she whispered. Lisa opened the door slowly. Sitting on the porch was a small box, neatly wrapped in brown paper. No note, no markings, just the box. Danielle grabbed her phone. "We're not touching that. I'm calling the police." Within minutes, officers arrived and carefully examined the package. They treated it as a potential threat, bringing in a bomb squad to safely open it. When the package was finally opened, it revealed a chilling sight, a collection of photos of Lisa and Lily, taken over the past several weeks. Some were from their home, others from the park, and even a few from Lily's school. Lisa's blood ran cold. "They've been watching us this whole time," she whispered. The officer in charge looked at her grimly. "Whoever's behind this is more than just a troll. This is serious stalking behavior. We'll do everything we can to track them down." But as Lisa stared at the photos, one thing was clear. Someone out there wasn't ready to let her go. The discovery of the photos turned Lisa's fear into full-blown paranoia. She couldn't shake the image of someone lurking in the shadows, watching her every move. Even with the increased police presence and the newly installed security system, Lisa felt like a prisoner in her own home. Danielle stayed with her around the clock, offering support and helping keep Lily's routine as normal as possible. But even Danielle couldn't hide her growing concern. "We can't just wait for the police to figure this out," Danielle said one evening. "There's got to be something we can do." Lisa nodded. "But what? I've already done everything I can think of. Cameras, lawyers, the police, none of it has stopped this." Danielle's eyes lit up with an idea. "What if we go on the offensive? Maybe we can dig into Karen's background or the people she associates with. If there's someone else involved, we might be able to find them ourselves." Lisa hesitated. The thought of taking matters into their own hands was both empowering and terrifying. "Do you really think we could find something the police haven't?" "It's worth a shot," Danielle said. "We've got nothing to lose." The next day, they started their investigation. Danielle set up her laptop on the kitchen table, pulling up public records, social media profiles, and news articles. Lisa helped, sifting through everything they could find on Karen, Todd, and Greg. After hours of digging, Danielle stumbled upon something. "Lisa, look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. It was a series of posts from a private Facebook group called Protect Our Community. The group's posts were filled with inflammatory rhetoric, blaming minorities for crime and pushing for extreme measures to protect children. Lisa's stomach churned as she scrolled through the names of the group's members. Among them were Karen, Todd, Greg, and several others. "This could be it," Lisa said. "One of these people might be the one sending the threats." Danielle nodded. "We should forward this to Andrea and the police. They can use it to narrow down their investigation." Lisa quickly sent the information to Andrea, who responded almost immediately. "Andrea, good work, Lisa. This is exactly the kind of lead we needed. I'll make sure the police follow up on this." The next few days were a waiting game. Lisa tried to stay focused on her daily routine, but every moment felt like a countdown to the next threat. Then, one evening, Andrea called with a major update. "Lisa, we've identified the person behind the latest threats. Andrea said. His name is Mark Davis, another member of the Protect Our Community group. The police have enough evidence to arrest him, and they're planning to bring him in tonight. Lisa felt a wave of relief but also a lingering unease. Do you think he's the last one? It's hard to say, Andrea admitted. But this is a significant step forward. With Mark in custody, we'll hopefully get more information on anyone else involved. That night, Lisa stayed glued to her phone, waiting for news. Finally, just after midnight, she received a text from Andrea. Andrea, Mark Davis has been arrested. He's already admitted to sending the messages and leaving the package. The police are questioning him now to determine if he acted alone. Lisa exhaled, the tension in her chest easing for the first time in weeks. She woke Danielle to share the news, and for the first time in a long time, they both managed to sleep soundly. The following morning, the police held a press conference to announce the arrest. Mark Davis was charged with multiple counts of harassment, stalking, and conspiracy. The media frenzy that had surrounded Lisa's story now turned its focus on Mark and the toxic ideology driving his actions. Lisa watched the press conference from her living room, feeling a mix of relief and anger. She was glad the immediate threat was over, but she couldn't ignore the deeper issue. Mark was just one of many who shared Karen's twisted views, and Lisa knew the fight against prejudice and hate was far from over. Later that day, Andrea called again. Lisa, I wanted to let you know that Mark implicated Karen in his confession, Andrea said. He claims she encouraged the harassment and even suggested targeting you at your home. Lisa's jaw clenched, so she was the mastermind all along. It looks that way, Andrea said. With this new evidence, the charges against Karen are being upgraded. She'll be facing serious jail time. A week later, Lisa stood on the steps of City Hall, preparing to speak at another rally organized by Mothers United for Equality. This time, the focus was on combating hate groups and advocating for stronger protections against harassment and stalking. As Lisa stepped up to the microphone, the crowd fell silent. Thank you all for being here today, she began. Over the past few months, my life has been turned upside down. My daughter and I were targeted, harassed, and threatened, all because of hate and ignorance. She paused, her voice steady. But we're still here, and we're not backing down. This isn't just about me or my family. It's about creating a world where no one has to live in fear because of the color of their skin or the way they look. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the square. Lisa continued, her heart full of determination. We've made progress, but there's still so much work to do. Together we can stand up to hate and build a future where everyone feels safe and valued. Thank you. As Lisa stepped away from the podium, she felt a sense of closure. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt ready to move forward. But just as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed with a new notification. A single message flashed on the screen. You may have stopped Mark, but we're still watching. Lisa's blood ran cold. The message sent Lisa's mind spiraling. She stared at her phone, her breath quickening. After everything they'd been through, after Mark's arrest and Karen's exposure, someone was still out there, threatening her and Lily. Danielle rushed over when she saw the color drain from Lisa's face. What is it? Lisa handed her the phone, unable to speak. Danielle's eyes widened as she read the message. No way. I thought we were done with this. Lisa clenched her fists. Me too. But whoever this is, they're not giving up. Danielle grabbed her own phone. We need to tell Andrea and the police right away. Within minutes, Andrea was on the line. Lisa explained the situation, her voice shaking with frustration and fear. Lisa, I'm sorry you're going through this again, Andrea said. I'll contact the police and make sure they prioritize this. We'll trace the message and see if we can identify the sender. Lisa nodded, though her fear lingered. I just want this to end. I don't want to keep looking over my shoulder every day. Andrea's tone was firm. We'll get to the bottom of this. Stay vigilant and keep your security measures in place. We'll handle the rest. That evening, Lisa and Danielle decided to review the footage from the security cameras again. They scored every clip from the past few days, looking for anything unusual. Near midnight, Danielle froze. Lisa, look at this. On the screen, a figure appeared near the edge of Lisa's property. The person wore a hood, their face obscured, but they seemed to be lingering, watching. They didn't approach the house, but their presence was unmistakable. Lisa's stomach churned. That's not Mark. He's in custody. Danielle nodded, which means that there's someone else involved. Someone who hasn't been caught yet. They immediately forwarded the footage to the police. By now, Lisa's house felt more like a surveillance hub than a home. The next morning, Lisa received a call from Detective Ramirez, one of the officers assigned to her case. "Lisa, we've reviewed the footage and the message," Ramirez said. "We're working with a cybersecurity team to trace the origin of the text. In the meantime, we've identified the individual in the video." Lisa gripped the phone tightly. "Who is it?" "His name is Peter Grant," Ramirez said. "He's another member of the Protect Our Community group. He's been on our radar, but this confirms his involvement." Lisa sighed, a mix of relief and frustration. "What's the next step?" "We've issued a warrant for his arrest," Ramirez said. "We're hoping to bring him in soon. Until then, we'll keep a close watch on your property." Lisa thanked him and hung up. She relayed the news to Danielle, who was cautiously optimistic. "They're closing in," Danielle said. "This Peter guy won't get away with it." But Peter Brand had no intention of going quietly. The following night, Lisa was jolted awake by a loud banging on her front door. Her heart raced as she grabbed her phone and checked the security feed. Peter was standing on her porch, his face partially visible under the hood. He was pounding on the door, shouting incoherently. Danielle ran into the room, her eyes wide. "Is that him?" Lisa nodded, her hands shaking. "Call the police." Danielle dialed 911 as Lisa stayed glued to the security monitor. Peter's behavior was erratic. He paced back and forth, occasionally pounding on the door and shouting threats. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. Peter turned to run, but it was too late. Police cars screeched to a halt, and officers quickly surrounded him. Lisa and Danielle watched as the officers tackled Peter to the ground and placed him in handcuffs. He screamed and thrashed, but the police subdued him and loaded him into a squad car. Lisa collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "It's finally over," she whispered. Danielle sat beside her, wrapping her in a comforting hug. "You did it, Lisa? You stood your ground." The next day, Detective Ramirez called with an update. "Peter Grant is in custody," Ramirez said. "He's confessed to sending the messages and stalking your property." He also confirmed that Karen encouraged his actions, even after her arrest. Lisa felt a wave of anger. Karen never stopped, even from behind bars. "That's correct," Ramirez said. "But with this new evidence, the case against her has strengthened significantly. She'll be facing additional charges, and we'll make sure Peter is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Lisa thanked him and hung up, finally feeling a sense of closure. A week later, Lisa stood once again at City Hall, addressing a crowd at a rally. This time, her speech carried a new weight. "We've seen the damage hate can cause," she said, her voice strong. "But we've also seen the power of a united community. Together, we've stood against fear, against prejudice, and against those who seek to harm us." The crowd cheered, their voices a chorus of support and solidarity. As Lisa stepped away from the podium, she felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had finally been lifted. But she knew this wasn't just her victory. It was a victory for everyone who had ever been targeted, silenced, or made to feel unsafe. And though the battle against hate was far from over, Lisa was ready to face whatever came next. In the days that followed Peter Grant's arrest, the media storm began to settle. Lisa's story had sparked a national conversation about racial profiling, harassment, and the dangers of hate-fueled communities like the one Karen had fostered. The police investigation continued, and as more members of the Protect Our Community group were identified, arrests followed. Karen, now facing additional charges, remained in custody, her influence unraveling by the day. Lisa, though still cautious, finally began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. The constant presence of police patrols eased her anxiety, and the supportive messages from friends, family, and even strangers reminded her that she was not alone. One afternoon, Lisa and Lily returned to Greenview Park, the place where their nightmare had begun. Lisa hesitated as they approached the playground, memories of that day flashing in her mind. "Are you sure you want to be here?" Danielle asked, walking beside her. Lisa nodded. "We can't let them take this from us. Lily deserves to play here, just like every other kid." Lily, seemingly unfazed by the weight of the moment, ran toward the swings. "Push me, Mommy," she called out, her laughter ringing through the air. Lisa smiled, her heart swelling with pride and love. "Coming, baby." As she pushed Lily on the swing, Lisa felt a newfound sense of strength. She had faced her worst fears, stood up to hate, and protected her daughter. Nearby, other parents watched with smiles, some even offering friendly waves. The community, once divided by Karen's actions, had rallied together in support of Lisa. Later that evening, Lisa sat down with Danielle to reflect on everything they'd been through. You know, Danielle said, "You become a symbol of resilience. People are looking up to you." Lisa chuckled softly. "I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted to keep my daughter safe." "And you did," Danielle said, "but you also inspired a lot of people to stand up and speak out." Lisa nodded, the weight of those words sinking in. "It's a responsibility I don't take lightly. If my story can help prevent this from happening to someone else, then it was worth it." A few days later, Lisa received a call from Andrea. "Lisa, I have some good news," Andrea said. "Karen has agreed to a plea deal. She's admitted to orchestrating the harassment and has agreed to a reduced sentence in exchange for providing information on other members of her group." Lisa was stunned. She finally admitted it. "Yes," Andrea confirmed. "This deal ensures she'll face consequences for her actions while helping us dismantle what's left of her toxic network." Lisa felt a wave of relief. That's the best outcome we could have hoped for. Andrea's tone was warm. "You've been incredibly brave, Lisa. Your courage has made a real difference." In the months that followed, Lisa continued to speak out at rallies and community events, sharing her story and advocating for justice and equality. She worked closely with Mothers United for Equality, helping to raise awareness and support for other families who had experienced similar injustices. Lily, blissfully unaware of the full extent of what they had faced, thrived in school and continued to enjoy her time at the park. One evening, as Lisa tucked Lily into bed, Lily looked up at her with curious eyes. "Mommy, are the bad people gone now?" Lisa smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Most of them are, sweetheart, and the rest? We'll make sure they can't hurt anyone else." Lily nodded, satisfied with that answer. "You're the best, Mommy." Lisa kissed her forehead, her heart full. "And you're my everything." As Lisa lay in bed that night, she reflected on how far they had come.